Hello, 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 and welcome to the Blue Oval Podcast. My name is Ben Weiss, and joining me, as always, Garrett Zeitlin. How's it going, man?
Ben, this past weekend was an absolute thrill. I think I said in our First Thoughts article that I can't remember the last time I enjoyed working on a Saturday as much as I just did. It almost made up for the terrible weekend of football
Oh,
that you and I both just had. Um,
horrible.
yeah, horrible on different scales, but horrible nonetheless. And yet, I think we can all take comfort in the fact that none of us are Florida State fans. And I think that's the biggest win
Oh,
of all
man.
here. For those of you who don't know, Florida State didn't advance to the college football playoff despite being the ACC champions and undefeated this season. So pretty wild stuff there. But I hope the excitement of Boston kind of made up for some of the football letdowns.
Yes, absolutely. And this is one of the rare weeks where I'm coming in blind to your opinions. I haven't read the first thoughts or anything. Normally, I try to at least read that to see where like so I know where we're going to disagree from the get go. This time, I have no idea. So I'm curious to see where this conversation goes before we get to all the BU action. Some not so exciting numbers with the ratings and reviews. We are up 0 on both Spotify and Apple Podcast. As we're getting going with the indoor track, I know it's a little bit of a letdown after cross country season in BU. Just remember, send us a review or a rating just while you got time on your holiday break. You got plenty of time. Just go ahead and do it.
Yeah. So ratings and reviews. I know you don't think it helps. It does. And I feel like every time I tell the audience that, someone goes in and does it. So please do that. Thank you. Also, we're on YouTube. So
Yes.
subscribe there. We're putting up some post race interviews, some of our podcasts as well, a handful of other different projects that we have up there. And we'll continue to utilize that space a bit more. Subscribers to the site can see a little bit more of our interviews, a handful of different aspects as well. So I'll leave it with that. And Benjamin, where do you want to start today?
Let's start. So this weekend was obviously the BU Sharon Collier Danville season opener. We're just gonna say BU so we don't have to say the name every time. But the 5Ks, as always, were absolutely fantastic. And I think we got to start with Parker Valby's performance and Graham Blank's performances. Both were outstanding. Which one do you think stood out more than the other?
I think.
It's hard
Think
because
of,
Volvy's got that round. She's under the round number of like the sub 15, whereas like Grand Blank's 1306 is probably fairly comparable, but it's not under that round number that like makes it that perform like a sub 13 just sounds better than a
yeah,
1306. And
right.
but it's hard. It's hard to divorce yourself from like those kind of like just preconceived like just numbers that we like to use.
Yeah, I'll put it this way. I think the final result from Valby was more impressive than the final result from Blanks. I mean, again, we're nitpicking here, but I think how Blanks ran his race and executed was significantly better than Valby, essentially just doing a time trial with Annie
Rodenfels.
Rosenfels. Thank you. And then being essentially acting as a rabbit, even though she
Yeah.
was in the race. So I'll go with that. But you tell me which one do you want to start with first?
Let's start with Valby because I think someone put it in our Slack if like put a poll up if she's gonna run
It was
sub
Mara.
15. Mara, yeah. And I looked at it and I was like, that seems ambitious, but I ultimately said yes because she's coming off of such a good cross country season where she seems to have been very healthy and running better than she ever has and just taken a leap. And I knew at BU it's going to be a good opportunity. I thought I was probably being a little aggressive saying sub 15, and yet I mean she easily cleared that mark, which I think is the most stunning part about that performance.
I'm not gonna lie, I was almost offended that she put in sub 15. I was like, sub 15? You mean something that no collegiate has ever done? I think Lisa Cole of Iowa State technically ran 14:55 out of season, all season's best kind of.
Yeah,
There are
yeah.
technicalities there. But that was on an outdoor track. No one's ever run sub 15. We ran what 15:03 last year.
Yep.
And we're like, oh my gosh. To me, the idea of sub 15 on an indoor track, and like, yeah, she was dominant, but it was. I was like, sub 15 is so aggressive. No woman had ever gone, no collegiate for the NCAA record had ever gone under 15:12. I mean, it was such an absurd number, and I was offended. I was like, absolutely not. No. And I was like, if she breaks 15:10, it's a great day, a fantastic day.
Yeah.
I'm now at a point where I think you have to wonder, and I don't know this because I'm not deep enough into the history. I wasn't around. I'm only here for this era. Is this the best duo of collegiate distance runners ever?
It has to be.
And it has to be. And I don't know what the comparison is in another sport. I couldn't figure it out. And I don't know what the comp is. Like, I don't think it's Kobe and LeBron, because then you're saying it's the top two ever, which I don't think we're quite there yet.
Yeah.
But I couldn't find in any sport, swimming, gymnastics.
It's like
that
Magic Bird is kind of like, and it might
that's
even
pretty close.
be better than that, because I mean, Magic Bird definitely both top 10 guys all time, and Valby and Tui might be edging towards top 5, and maybe there's some people that say Bird and Magic are top 5, but like I think Valby and Tui are edging it towards top 5 territory.
Well, if they said Bird was top 5, they'd be wrong. But that's a Sixers fan of me.
Well, you're talking to two Philly guys.
Yeah,
we can't have a good conversation about this.
Yeah, neither here nor there. But the fact of what Valby has done since June, winning that 5K national title, you kind of look at what the rivalry has been between her and Caitlin Tui now, and it's so much more legitimate, it feels.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, this was like a one-sided, like, quote-unquote rivalry, and now Valby has just taken it to a completely different level, and she did it alone. She soloed it, and I'm so blown away. Like, I'm so impressed. I'm just so impressed. I knew she was great, but I don't know. I just wasn't expecting that.
I think this performance gives a lot of credence to the idea that Valby could have beaten Tui, even with Tui being at full strength at NCAAs. I was someone who was still picking Tui going into NCAA championships for cross country, but it was clear that Valby had taken a step forward. Like, just the way that she was dominating races to an even higher level, and the fact that she was able to beat Tui at Nuttycombe, it proved that either maybe something's a little off with Tui, but more than likely Valby's just gone up a level. And this just, and it's hard to tell that in cross country because times are so dictated by courses, weather, whatever, or just the tactics. But on the track, you get some firm, hard numbers. And for her to go sub 15, I think that just shows that she is at a level that no NCAA runner's ever been at, not even Caitlin Tui. And that if she can continue to do this, she's going to beat Tui in the 5K. I'm not ready to say that she could do that in the 3K because I think Tui still has that speed edge. But like right now, she is clearly the best 5K runner in the country. And I think that's a pretty stunning thing to say, considering we're in the era of arguably the best distance runner ever on the women's side.
Well, are we sure Tui's not even going to go pro before then?
Yeah, and that's...
And like, I think the general feeling has been like she's going to... Now, there's nothing solidified, right. Nothing that I know and set in stone. Like, there's been not that I know has been any like firm decision, but it feels like the general consensus is that she'll go pro probably sooner rather than later. And truthfully, I would be surprised if she went pro before March. She went pro after March. I feel like she would most likely go pro sooner rather than later. Yeah. It might be in the next couple of weeks. Because, especially because I think what happens is that aren't a lot of these pro contracts on an annual cycle that start during the new year? So it would make a lot of sense, I believe, in my mind, for her to go pro. And so for that reason, it basically just opens the door. We'll see what Doris Lemengol can do. That'll be pretty interesting. And I think now this also gets into an interesting conversation of what does Valby do in the 3K? And I think this kind of leads us into a separate performance of Olivia Markezich running an unbelievable 840 mark for 3K, destroys an elite field of collegiates. Who is the favorite in the 3K now? Do you see the conundrum I'm having?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And I would lean. I don't know. I keep going. I'm going back and forth just in that sentence. I would lean Valby, but just because I think she's just in another class of fitness. But Markezich has clearly shown that she's at a new like peak for her fitness, and she has better speed than Valby. I trust her more with a lap to go if they're neck and neck. But yeah, and to your Tui point, I think it makes probably the most sense for her to turn pro. And if I'm her agent, or were her, like if she was able to hire an agent, I would tell her to go pro, because I don't think there's a whole lot to be gained running this next year. But as a fan, man, I want to see her and Valby go head to head like at least one or two more times. Like I just think the way that Valby has stepped it up, and if she can continue to stay healthy, I mean, we talked about Magic Bird. Like that's the kind of like rivalry that we could see actually develop where they're both picking up wins over this next year. And I just would love to see that. And I unfortunately think you're right that we just unfortunately kind of missed the boat on that.
Yeah, and again, I just want to clarify because I know people will
Not
aggregate
reporting,
this.
not aggregating it. No.
No one's saying that we know for sure that she's going pro. She could very well run in the winter. I would be surprised if that's the case, but
Yeah.
that's just the personal feeling that I've gotten from my conversations. Who knows? Um, the rest of the 5K field, I want to be a surprise. I want to talk about it. I don't know if there's a lot to talk about. I perfectly nailed Hilla Alamamwe's time, maybe unless I said 15:16. I mean, it's close. Chloe Scrimgeour, 15:24,
Yeah.
continues to be a true breakout star. She was the third best collegiate. Kenzie Doyle in 15:27. I think we need to talk about this. Where did that come from?
Yeah, I scrolled right past it because I was just like, nah, I don't recognize that name. Like that can't be like a a collegiate.
Collegiate, yeah.
And sure enough, I mean, to the fact that she was in the first heat, I think is pretty incredible.
Yeah, and that's I wrote in the preview. I was like, what's she doing in the top heat? Like I wanted to be nice about it, but I was like, listen, she could be super fit, awesome, but like I don't know what the justification is. Well, clearly that's the justification,
Yeah.
but I didn't know what the credentials were beforehand. So clearly Boston knew something, UMass knew something, Kenzie Doyle knew something beforehand that we didn't. But 15:27, it feels very Emily McKay esque.
Yeah.
Northeast, I think they were actually at the same conference. Where she's pretty good mile, 3K, 5K, kind of hybrid, solid mid-major, but now really stepping up. That's what it kind of feels like. And 15:27 certainly puts her in that conversation. So great race for her. I think she's going to be. So I would be shocked if she didn't get into the national meet. She's safe at 15:27. Behind her, who's the performance that you thought was maybe the best or most encouraging, so on and so forth?
I think Racina Machu, it just is another like great example of a more firm example of how good she has gotten over the last 3 months. That we've seen the breakout performances throughout the cross country season. She ran great, obviously at NCAA's as well, but this was just another kind of stamp of like she is clearly an All-American contender in almost any race she runs right now. It seems. I'll be interested to see what she does in the 3K and anything lower than that. But right now she's on a roll because, I mean, you look at the rest of these names like Molly Bourne. It's good to see Jenna Hutchins run fast, but like Anika Rice, Elise Stearns, Grayson Lark, like Ella Bront, like Phoebe Anderson, like all these women, it's not stunning to see them run these times. I think for Machu, after having such a breakout year on the grass, to see her be able to transition and continue to do that on the track, I think is very encouraging.
I'm not gonna lie, I kind of thought I would get a little bit more out of Rosita Machu.
Yeah, I think this was set up for her to run probably like low 15:30s or like sub 15:30, especially that since she was in that top heat. But for her to be able to kind of hang on and still run a very solid time, I think is a good performance.
Yeah, I like Jenna Hutchins. The fact that she nearly got the Heat 2 win. I mean,
Yeah.
0.03 seconds crossing the line with Rice there. Um, that to me was encouraging. I needed something a little bit more after that. After a cross country season that ended not great. She was talented, but she just didn't end it on a good note.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. I thought the times would be a little faster from Heat 2.
So that was kind of going to be my question. If we saw 4 collegiates go sub 15:30, I think I'm correct in saying that.
Yes,
And
yes.
then we have this big group at like between 15:36 and 15:39. What do we think? Like, do we think 4 women qualified here? Do we think maybe like 6 did? Like,
I
I
feel
don't
like
know.
you're probably getting. Ah, gosh, I think the 15:37s are going to get in because usually what happens is that a lot of these national qualifying times come from Boston U anyways. Now,
Right.
not all of them. There's certainly, Washington produces plenty,
Yeah.
especially depending on the race and how those unfold. Um,
And there'll be another BU race
there'll be another BU
in
race.
in what, February, that's usually pretty loaded,
Right.
so
Right. And so you kind of look at that and I go, well, if this is the race and like, yeah, I don't think all of them were going to get in, but I could see the 15:37s going to get. Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, if the 15:37s get in, that adds another what, 4 names to the list. So and
Well,
that's where it's tight. That's like ends up being like 8 of the 16, which you're right, that sometimes is the case. But I feel like Molly Bourne's in, and then I would be a little nervous if I'm Jenna Hutchins, Anika Rice,
that's fair.
honestly.
Yeah.
So it'll. I always love watching the line, and it seems like every year it's better and better. So it'll be something to monitor. Why don't we go and transition to the men's 5K though? We mentioned Graham Blanks's really incredible performance running 13:06 for the win,
13:03.
or 13:03, excuse me. 13:03 for the win over Kai Robinson's 13:06, excuse me. Just, I mean, you look at this field, easily taking down Parker Wolf, Haptem Samuel from New Mexico, just a great group, and nearly going sub 13. Is Graham Blanks just like the guy at this point? I know we've mentioned over the years, and I've written about it in the past about we haven't really had that one true dominant guy that goes kind of like all the way through the year, like NCAA title on the grass, and then several NCAA titles in the winter and spring. We haven't really had a guy like that. Kai Robinson obviously had a great fall, or not a fall, great spring last year, but didn't have the prerequisite grass or indoor seasons. Do we think Blanks can do that, the wire to wire kind of year?
He could. It would be kind of like, and I think you're right. Like I'm kind of thinking about that. It's like it's been a bit since what, like the Grant Fisher, Cheserek, Morgan McDonald era. Like
Justin, yeah, it's like Morgan
Justin
McDonald was
Knight.
really the last one to do it. Justin Knight
Yeah,
before him, and then Cheserek.
yeah. I think that's kind of what the era is. Maybe Nagoose, even though Nagoose and that good Nagoose Hawker tier, everyone was so at such a high level, but they all clash at the same time.
Yeah,
Um, Yeah, I think he certainly has a shot. And what was so impressive about this performance is not necessarily the time. Like, don't get me wrong, the time is wildly impressive. But what more impressed me was how he ran it. He started out a little bit more conservative, slowly moved up to the field, didn't wait too long to get up there, but certainly, wasn't too eager either.
hmm,
Once he got up there, he hung around. He just let the pace carry him with the leaders. When he made his move, it was decisive. It was quick. It seemed like he maybe even had a second gear after that. He powered home. It was one of the best, like perfectly executed races. And I just thought he made every little move at the exact perfect time. And that's why I think like he can be the guy. Because again, it's another thing. I've said this time and time again, where it's you can run fast, that's great, but can you make the necessary moves to get marquee wins like this? Can you respond to surges when the rest of the pack is sleeping? Like I remember last year's indoor 5K at Nationals, it was very surge
Yeah.
based. It was very on and off, cat and mouse kind of game. Um, and I think that's something that Grant Blanks can respond to incredibly well, and he's shown that over the last few weeks.
Yeah, I think I just want to see him win a little bit more of a tactical race.
Sure.
Don't get me wrong. He ran this as well as you could have, and this is not set up to be like this is set up to run fast, and he still closed in about 57 seconds in that last 400, which is crazy. But
Right.
we're gonna have more than likely you're gonna need to close in 55 to win an NCAA title, depending on how the race is run. But
Yeah, but he can do that.
no, and I think so too. But it's just interesting. He'll be going up against a guy like Robinson, who I think you and I both believe has a little bit better of a kick. He's certainly, I think, overtaken like the Nico Young and the Drew Bosleys of the world in terms of like who you trust to have the most strength. So I just think it'll be interesting. This race was a perfect one for the guy that he has turned into, especially over the
Mhm.
past few months. So it's hard for me to really say that he's going to be able to. It's harder for me to say that we really learned anything new about him, other than he's really freaking good. The jury's still out, but I would love to see someone really take that mantle and win several NCAA titles across 3 seasons.
Yeah, he certainly could. I think you bring up a good point though with the technical aspect. And this is not me like being critical, but like yeah, we've seen a lot of instances where people run super fast times, but they don't always have the tactics behind it. I think Blanks is a little different. I think he's
Hmm.
proven over the last few months that he does have something a little bit more substantial in terms of the tactical aspect. We'll see what happens. And again, you need speed at the end of those races. You need to be in position. I think he can very much win it. In fact, I think he's the favorite. But I think Kai Robinson at 13:06,
Yeah.
that's fast enough to the point where I'm like, okay, what happens in a tactical race? And I think he's still very much in the conversation. And frankly, I thought Robinson was a little more aggressive than I expected him to be. He was consistently at the front with a lot of the Pacers and with Sam Akin. And he's usually someone who's a little more nuanced in terms of how he approaches these races. But if he's still running 13:06, and I think he was probably thinking like, listen, let's just go get the record. Let's just go get it. And I don't know if this race is quite as fast, maybe not 13:03. I don't know if it's quite as fast without Robinson, also being up there to push with Akin and whatnot. So yeah, I thought that was impressive, and I'd still keep Robinson. I think in the national title conversation at the very least. I mean, he also broke the record.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's 1B to Graham Blanks is 1A at this point. And it is like you do mention that he has been more aggressive, and that was kind of the approach that he took at NCAA's too, which was a kind of a surprising thing for me. He usually, like you said, does a good job of kind of just hanging back and responding to moves and then making a big kick. And I would prefer that he would do that.
Yeah,
I think he kind of cost himself a little bit at NCAA's. Here, it's not as big a deal. I mean, there's no reason to kind of sit that much in this
right.
kind of race. But I hope that when we get to March, he's a little bit more conservative. And then I think we have a true title race that'll be really fun to watch.
Want to highlight the rest of the collegiates in this field. Parker Wolf, 13:13. I think this is kind of the performance that we're like, nice. Okay, this is a
Yeah.
step, like significantly noticeable step in the right direction. Hoptum Samuel, 13:14. Liam Murphy, 13:21. Great race by him. Alex Merritt, 13:21. And then Nico Young wins Heat 3 in
Unbelievable.
13:22. He wins that. He was apparently, according to his Instagram story, supposed to be the pacer, and it was just like, I'm just going to finish, actually. And then he still wins 13:22. This was less than 4 hours after he wins the men's 3K in 7:37. That is incredible. Drew Bosley was also in this race. In Heat 3, ran 13:29. He had run 7:43, I believe, earlier in the evening as well. I want to hold off and talk about the NAU men
Yeah, yeah,
later.
yeah.
Let's hold off on them for now. But thoughts on everyone else behind Blanks and Robinson?
Nothing's shocking, just very solid, good performances.
Hmm.
Like
Yep.
I think that's like Wolf is probably the biggest outlier out of this group, but everyone else, and I liked what we saw out of Murphy. Mayer, we know he can do this. Like then you look behind further back, Kiermaiego, Jackson Sharp, Dennis Kipnagich, and Bob Liking all sub 1330. I mean, are we really surprised by any of those names? Like, I think it's just, again, you're going to have to run sub 1330 at least to qualify like this year, which is just bonkers. Like, it is going to be ridiculously fast to qualify in the 5K this year.
I wanted to take a look and figure out how many of these men went under 1320 last year, because it feels like, well, we had four men this year that went under 1320 collegiately, and I
Yep.
feel like we had a little, yeah, we had
Four
one,
thirteen
two,
fifteen this year.
yeah, that's true. So let me okay, so here's how many men went under 1320 at BU last year. It was one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight. Eight men went
Oof.
under 1320. We only got four this year.
Yeah. Got a lot
It,
of 1321s, 1322s.
yeah, we got a lot of those. And so I'm wondering how much faster the 5K cutoff is going to be. I mean, not
What
having
was the
four,
cutoff last year?
the top 16 cutoff was, drum roll please, it was 1329, but well, yes, it was 1329 regardless of scratches, because there was one scratch and someone got in, so
I
two
still think
scratches.
it will be faster. We just might not have as many sub 1320s because I mean, you look at it, there's already 7 guys under 1323. And then we have another group at, let's see, one, two, three, four more guys under 1329.
For D1, we should say.
Yeah, for D1. Yeah. So that's what we're up to 11 right there under 1329. I mean,
Yeah, but if you also think about like how many guys also went under 1330 after the BU season opener,
yeah.
it was one, two, three, four, five, six. Yeah, I mean, like it was really like a heavy portion of last year's meet, like a seven, like 10, 11 of them were basically from this meet last year. So
Yeah, if I'm Dennis Kipnagich, I think he's like the line, like that 1326. I think Bob Lanking is probably a little nervous at 1328.
I don't
And
know. I think I like him better at 1328 than I would have liked someone else last year.
yeah, maybe. But I mean there's like I think Bosley's probably gonna have to run again. You got like Casey Klinger if he's back healthy at some point during this indoor season. He's someone that certainly will go under. Maybe some of the other BYU guys when they do run a 5K. There's certainly guys out there that I think can go under that 1328.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So I think that for me I think it's that 1326 is kind of the line, which will be interesting to follow.
Have you seen how many men, just men in total, not collegiates,
Mhm.
went under 14 minutes?
No, I'm not gonna
Give me
scroll
a
I'm
guess.
not gonna
Yeah,
scroll all the way
I know.
down.
Give me a guess. That's what I want to guess. Yeah.
53.
You're not even close.
Oh,
It's
that many more?
97.
Oh my gosh,
Now remember, this is collegiates and unattached and pros, right? Um,
that's ridiculous.
97 men went for John Tatter, unattached of North Carolina, 14 flat. He was 98. And then everyone else went under 14 minutes. This is wild. Like, there's some great names at the back end of these.
Yeah,
So,
I'm trying to count how many like non-collegiates there were to see if I can help my case, but it's
yeah,
not
it's a bit
looking
tricky.
not looking good. I think like
No,
there's maybe 20, so there's probably still like 70. That's
yeah,
incredible.
it's pretty wild. So, okay, let's move on to the 3Ks. Who do you want to go to, men or women?
Let's stick with the men since we were just talking about, so we can talk about that NAU duo. Nico Young takes home the win in 737, number 2 all time, three all time. And Brian Massow 7:38 in second. And then we had Ryan Shoppy, who is the third collegiate in 7:38 as well. Bosley was fourth in 7:43, fourth collegiate.
Fourth collegiate. Yeah.
Man, this was just so impressive. Like,
Mhm.
I truly did not think Nico Young had the wheels to be able to run this fast. To be able to nearly run, to basically be running what, 4:04 pace for like nearly 2 miles is just insanely fast. And Brian Massow, again, just another indicator that he is legit. Oklahoma State is going to have just a wildly good DMR again. Like, they are going to run something so absurd. Like, I don't even know how much they're going to beat the record by again. It's going to be crazy. But Nico Young, hats off to him. And this is a great indicator that, I mean, I still don't trust him in the 3K to win, but maybe this shows that he might be more ready to win a 5K. And unfortunately, he's going to have to go up against Blanks and Robinson, who I think are as two of the best contenders that we've seen for a 5K over the last few years. But he looks like he's in a different kind of shape, has a different kind of speed, and I think that's going to be so very conducive to winning the 5K this year.
Two things. He was seated at 7:51. Don't know why. Very odd. I don't know how you 14 seconds faster than your
Is
seat
that what
time
he
there.
ran in high school?
Yeah, I was pretty close to it. I think he ran 7:56, 7:57. But the point standing, I think the second point here is that, like, oh my gosh, Nico, I have never seen you kick like this. I've never seen this. I've been asking for years. Like, show me some turnover, show me a kick, show me some speed. And it was so good. And not only did he run fast and probably, he's probably at his best over 5K and 10K.
Yeah.
Not only did he run so incredibly fast over 3K, but the way that he kicked,
Mm-hmm.
perfect slingshot around the curve. His turnover was clearly better. He had so much speed at the end of there, and he outkicks guys like Ryan Shoppy, for instance,
Yeah.
who's very, very good in terms of his turnover. I think he's like a 354 or 355 mile PR. It was, I mean, I could forget the time. If they
Yeah.
just run that fast, if they run 8:30 and Nico Young shows that kind of speed, I'm thrilled. And I was so encouraged, and I'm just really happy to see that, because now I feel like I can kind of go into these winter months feeling like I can get a little bit behind him, right? Am I ready to be like, am I ready to quite put him um, in the blanks Robinson 5K title conversation? I don't know if I'm quite ready for that, but if I continue to see hints of this throughout the rest of the season, I might end up having to pick him for a national title at some point. I mean, that it was really, really impressive, and I was so thrilled to finally see that.
Yeah. 27.4 last 200. That's, I think, the biggest number, honestly, out of all this. And for him to run the fastest last lap out of anybody is also pretty wild. And to pass as many people as he did in the last lap, I think, is also a great indicator. And this is just not the race. Like, if you freeze the video at 200 to go, 1 lap left, and you ask me to pick who's going to win, I'm picking several people before I pick Nico Young.
Yep.
And I think him picking or taking down this field and getting this win in the manner that he did is the most exciting thing. And just, again, I keep coming back to, just shows that he has turned another leaf and ready to actually challenge for a victory, besides just having a great time. And he's run fast before. This is faster than he's ever run before. But the thing, like you said, we're most encouraged about is that turnover. It is the way that he ultimately ended up winning this race.
Brian Massow, 738, NCAA number 4 all time. Ryan Shoppy, 738.8, NCAA number 7 all time, I believe. Two notes here. Brian Massow might run under 13:08 in the 5K this season if he continues to run like
Yep,
this. He
I
is
agree.
unbelievably fit, and he also is just completely unfazed by the men around him. He's a rookie from overseas. Usually, whether you're a freshman, whether you're an international athlete who's never really had NCAA experience, or you're both, that's pretty impressive because usually guys don't respond well. And he has time and time and time again. I've been so impressed by him. I still think we just need to learn more about him before I can really like analyze this. But let's just put it this way: he's insanely fit. And then Ryan Shabi, I have a feeling he might go down as the most underappreciated or
Yeah.
underrated distance runner of this millennium.
I mean, he does. He just turns into like a mouth-watering performance once every year, like or once every season, really, where you're just like, where the heck did that come from? And you look at the performance list at the end of each season, you're like, oh yeah, forgot that. Yeah, he's number 2 on the performance list this year somehow, and none of us are going to pick him to be top 3 in this race at NCAA's. But like, I agree. He just consistently puts together these world-class times year in and year out.
Yeah, like 7:41.99 last year. And he was 5th on the national leaderboard, which is just wild. And like it's so absurd. I do love that he just ran as fast as he does. Just because I've always thought of him as like a very dynamic, explosive name when you pair that 3K, when you pair this new 3K 7:38 with a 3:37 1500 PR, with a 3:55 mile PR, endurance of 3:37 for 5K, which frankly he could run faster than that if you're running 7:38.
Yeah.
Love that. I mean, in all this, by the way, like Fuad didn't run the 3K. Mayer was 13:21 in the 5K. Dennis Kipnagich, was
13:25 or
26, I
26.
think.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy stuff. Like, can you imagine that Oklahoma State has a 7:38 guy on their roster and they won NCAA XC championships with 49 points, 5 in the top 15 without him?
Yeah.
Wild.
And and a lot of these guys are coming back next year. Like it is absolutely stunning. The rest of this group, Bosley, 7:43, Chariot 7:45, Lucas Kiprop 7:47. Good performances, but just speaks to how good the NCAA is at the 3K that we're not really batting an eye at those times anymore. Which is, if you would have told us that 2 years ago, we would have fallen straight on our face.
Bosley, I think it's a conversation worth having. I don't want to say that I'm worried about him. I'm not. But Nutty Combe, he opts to be the aggressor. Doesn't work out in his favor. Doesn't have that last gear shift. NCAA's is one of the aggressors up there. Can't hang with the top group. 3K, he's the NCAA record holder in this event. He, again, is pretty aggressive in this race. He's very aggressive, actually, in terms of running from the front. Doesn't have that last gear at the end. I don't know how confident I am in him right now. He seems to be missing that last gear, and I know he has it, and I'm sure by February I'll be like, well, that was a silly thing to be concerned about. But I just thought that was interesting, especially because he continues to be the aggressor in a lot of these situations. So
he's just not at peak fitness. I think it's clear that he's just not at 100% of his fitness that he could be or has been at before. Like, I don't know if that's a injury that he suffered at some point. I don't know if there's something else going on. I'm not going to obviously speculate, but I just don't think he's fully him. And he's still running fine. Like these aren't bad performances. He's just running at 5%, which is still better than 99% of the NCAA. But it's just not, he needs that extra 5% or so to really be with Nico Young, with the rest of these guys at the top level.
By the way, in case we forgot to mention this again, Nico Young, 13:22. Drew Bosley, 13:29. Less than 4 hours after these performances. Super, super impressive. Okay, women's 3K. Let's move to that. Olivia Markezich just followed the pacer and then just kept hitting the gas even more. and gapping the field and gapping the field. I thought she was a favorite. I didn't pick her to win, but I wouldn't have been surprised if she won. I had her running 8:53. If you had told me she had run 8:46, I would have been impressed but not shocked. Well, she ran 8:40. That's the second fastest 3K time ever in collegiate history. Caitlin Tuohy's only faster at 8:35, 8:36, is it?
I think 35, yeah.
It was so impressive. And the thing with Markezich is that, like, we've seen her have turnover and use
Mhm.
tactical understanding, and she's experienced and she continues to improve. And she's coming off of a tremendous postseason peak at the NCAA championships. Again, we're going to come back to this conversation of Valby's still out there. Let's assume Tui's not in the picture. Is Markezich your 3K national title favorite right now?
Again, I'm gonna still lean Valby, but Markezich is doing everything you could possibly ask for someone who would be the favorite. It seems foolish to bet against her. She has gotten better and better at the flat 3K every single year. She surprised herself with her performances at, I think, BU last year and then NCAA's last indoor season. And it looks like she's surprising herself once again. Like these, just I didn't think she had this much room to improve. And every time I think that, she goes out and exceeds my expectations by like 5 seconds. I think it would be I got to stop putting like ceilings on her, and I think I could end up looking very foolish picking against her ever and any race for the rest of the year.
Yeah, it sounds like she's also going to do a DMR. We had Angela May, our freelance guy out there. She had put an emphasis on saying that she would probably like to do the DMR 3K double
Yeah,
this year. So, I I'm oh man, I'm so impressed. 8:40 in that field. And let's talk about the women who
yeah,
she beat and soundly outran. Like, it wasn't really close at all. It was Maya Ramsden in second, 8:46. Duke's Amina Matug, 8:46 in third. Bila Chipkiri of Oklahoma State, fourth place, 8:49. Maddie Elmore, she was the fifth collegiate in 8:50 from Oregon. Kaylee Mitchell of Oregon State, 8:51. Flamina Asakal, 8:52 from Florida. Kimberly May of Providence, 8:54. Then Riley Chamberlain wins Heat 2 in 9 flat from BYU there. That is such an incredible field. And all of these women, I would say, are like elite at their best 3K runners. Like, I think you can make the argument that everyone who I just mentioned,
yeah.
with the possible exception of Asakal and maybe May, that the 3K is their best event.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Ramsden's the perfect example of that. A 1500-meter champion, NCAA champion, but also someone who can run a great 5K and was what, sixth at NCAA's this past cross country season, like, or top 10 at least. Like
Who was this?
Ramsden, am
Oh,
I
she
correct?
was eighth?
Eighth, yeah, somewhere in there. But yeah, so this is right in her wheelhouse for a 3K
She was
for
10th. Yeah.
10th for someone who is that good at cross country and that good in the 1500. And for Markezich to just, like you said, it wasn't close to beat her that soundly. And these are good performances by Ramsden, Matug, like Jeff Curie, like 8:46 and 8:49. Like, those are great runs. If you would have told any of them that they were going to run that, they would have happily taken it, I believe, before they stepped on the line. So I mean, this isn't to say that they ran poorly, not at all. This is all about just how much better Markezich is than everyone else at the moment.
For the perspective, Maya Ramsden, NCAA number 6 all time. Amina Matug, NCAA number 7 all time. Bila Chipkuri is NCAA number 10 all time. Remember when like running 850 was like a big deal?
Yeah.
Remember those days? That was fun.
I
Actually, it's not
mean,
nearly as fun as now. I'll just say that.
I mean, you look at this. I mean, normally we don't get that many NCAA qualifiers from the 3K at BU, but you're looking at like 6, 7 like women like punching their ticket. Like, it is going to be a tough field to get into this year.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Yeah, I don't think we can say 8, which is crazy.
And here's the thing. Actually think here's a hot. I don't know how hot of a take this is. I feel like Asakol and May are probably still better suited for the mile.
Um, yeah, I agree. I
Just
especially Asakol.
yeah. And it's I think it's okay if the 3K gets like super tactical maybe, but like I don't know. I just think they're just better suited for the mile.
Yeah.
But yeah, wild stuff. And like let's talk about Matu real quick. The fact that she's so versatile
Hmm.
is crazy impressive. But to then be so elite at all of these different levels is just as impressive. And then you have Bilip Chipkuri, who I think we've been very high on this year.
Yes.
We loved her freshman year campaign, but I think you and I both saw this crazy high ceiling that she had. And now we're finally beginning to see it. Seventh at
Yep.
NCAA XC, 849 in this race. And then, I kind of said this in my meet preview. I said this for Elmore, I said this for Asakol, and I said this for May. I was like, hey, they're great milers who also happen to have really good cross country seasons. In theory, this should be a really good time for them. This should be their sweet spot.
Absolutely.
That's exactly what happened. And then lost in all of this is Kaylee Mitchell running 851, which is like, again, another one of those, like, she might be one of the most underappreciated runners of this era, given how good she is.
Yeah. I mean, what she's done, and I feel like she just gets paired with Featherstone Hall all the
Yeah.
time, and she's obviously a great runner in her own right. But yeah, what Mitchell has been able to do sees every season is she is just almost an All American lock in any event that she does in any year. It is remarkable her consistency year in year out.
All right, let's wrap the 3K. We'll go through the miles real quick. We'll maybe briefly touch it. 800s, Megan Hunter, 203, indoor 800-meter PR. She
Yep,
wins
good
pretty
run.
easily from BYU. Great run. I guess my only thought process is, knowing that she had such a monster race in outdoor nationals last year, running that 201 out of nowhere.
Yeah.
What does this 203 tell you about her in December?
I mean, I think it just shows that she is a little bit more consistent, and I think will be someone that we're going to see run a lot faster, more consistently throughout the year. Like, it won't be I think she'll run 201 again at least, and it just won't be a surprise. We'll probably see her run it once or twice this year, and I think that probably is a great sign for her going into NCAAs where she can rely on like past performances rather than needing to have the race of her life to be able to advance.
Oh, I like that take. That's a good take. Tanoda Matsada, am I saying
Yep.
that right? The Georgetown rookie. He ran 147 for 800 meters in high school. He ran 358 in the mile, also in high school. He runs wire to wire. His teammate paces him. Pretty, nothing really to note here.
Solid.
Like he was solid. I don't know if you have any notes about that.
No, when I saw that that performance, I was just like, seems like a good rust buster first collegiate race. Like nothing special, but I think it's just good to get that under his belt, and I expect faster times from him when January comes along.
Women's mile. Gabija Gavadite follows the pacer and just never relents. She was clearly the best runner in this field. I predicted that she would win. I predicted that she would win 433. She did both of those things. In fact, I think I actually got like 4 of the top 5 correct, and my fifth runner, Lauren Freeland, was 6. So uh, it was a very predictable field, but also like I had a pretty good weekend for predictions, other than like wildly underestimating the times for some of those 5K and 3K times. But um, Sofia Gorian leads the chase back in 436. Gladys Chipnagich, who kind of followed Gavadite into the last few laps there, she gets third in 437, and then a slew of women
Yeah.
437. That's Claudia Kazmierska, Elise Thorner, Lauren Freeland, Savon Auerbach. Um, what is your key takeaway from this race?
I don't think we really learned anything. I think it was good to see Sofia Gorian run her first race as well. She's clearly one of the next great 800-meter runners that we're going to be seeing challenge the Stanford duo and Michaela Rose. I think this is a great start for her, running 436, finishing second and beating a lot of very accomplished women. But I mean, like you said, very predictable. I honestly thought the times would be maybe like 2 to 3 seconds faster. I'm surprised that like someone like Kazimierska's not running 4:35 in this race.
And that's what I predicted her to run. So
Yeah, like I'm 100% with you. I thought sub 4:35 would be in the cards for her. But other than that, I mean, other than times being a little bit slower, I think everybody ran about what you would expect, and the order isn't that surprising. I want to get excited about this because this is the first big mile that we've seen all year, but there's just not a lot to take from this.
um men's mile here. On pro, Sam Ellis takes the
Mhm.
win, is the aggressor for most of the race, but Aiden McCarthy of Cal Poly begins to push. Elliott Cook of Oregon also follows him. In the end, Cook throws down a wicked last lap.
Yep.
Almost doesn't quite get Ellis. Ellis, gets the clear lead by 0.14 seconds, but Cook made things quite interesting. Cook gets second overall in 3:55. McCarthy 3:56. I think that was a pretty predictable one too. The times I have were pretty close there. Parker Schneider of BYU, or not BU,
Boston U.
excuse me,
Yeah.
Boston U, excuse me, comes out of nowhere, runs
Yeah.
3:56, and then Carson Smith of Cal Poly 3:59. Ryan Van Hoy, another middle distance stud, now on his roster. Main takeaway here.
Elliott Cook has blown me away in the last like 3 months.
Yeah.
His ability on the grass is way better than I thought he would ever get to. He had in a year where Oregon was just not very good in cross country. He was kind of the bright light. I thought he was very, very good and exceeded expectations. And then to carry that over to come right off of cross country season and then still be able to run 3:55, like he's going to run 3:52 this year. Like he's going to be very, very good. And I think that strength that he gained this fall is going to come to fruition in a big way this winter and spring. And I was not super high on him last year, but I think he's certainly a very strong All-American contender. And then you pair that with beating an Aiden McCarthy, who I think we both feel like is an All-American favorite as well. I think Cook could turn into like the one a guy that we're talking very seriously about over the next few months.
I agree. Cook was really impressive. Like he was relentless. He did not let up. I think in a lot of those situations, like you see someone like Ellis that far ahead, and it's like you
Let
can
him
see
go.
even from the broadcast, it's like unless Cook pulls out the greatest kick in human history, he wasn't gonna catch him. But he never let off, and it was at least close enough at the end to say like it was a close race.
Hmm.
Um, so I was super impressed, and I admittedly I don't think Cook is in a position to kick like that if McCarthy's not there to kind of bring him
Sure.
along. So I'll give McCarthy credit there. Question: McCarthy, what does he run this year?
I still think 800.
What about
I
the
think
DMR? Because now they have Davis Bove, they have a 3:59 mile in
yeah,
Carson Smith. So what about that?
it's an interesting point. I hadn't thought of that. So I still think he probably runs the 800 just because I think he'll be part of the team that he'll be part of the qualifying team. But I think he'll ultimately be allowed to chase him more of an individual race unless they think they can win the DMR, which I don't
McCarthy
think they
Bove.
can.
I don't know McCarthy Bove. That's
I
a pretty good one
I would
too.
still lean Washington and Oklahoma State. Like you think,
Well, yes, yeah. I mean, I guess it depends on like who they run, and I guess Oklahoma State could pretty much field whoever they want.
yes,
Yeah, and Washington too. Yeah, yeah, okay, yeah, that's fair. I don't know. I
it's
guess
more
that's fair.
fun when teams load up and do the DMR. But
Yeah,
I just
I know. But like, what if McCarthy doubled back? He did 800, came back in the 800 leg, and they put Smith on the 12.
yeah, I think that's again. I just think his focus will be more the 800.
Okay.
It will be I think 356 is good, but I think we've seen his higher end ceiling comes in the 800.
Okay. Where does McCarthy, and this is my last question before we
Mhm.
recap it, where does McCarthy end on the national leaderboard this season going into the national meet?
356.
No, for the 800 meters.
Oh, in the 800. Just in terms of like what time he runs for
Like what
qualification.
top 5, top 10, top 3, top.
Um I'll say top 5. I'll be I don't I'm trying to think of what the 800 field is going to look like, and
It's going to be Busy Mana.
yes.
Um,
Well, we just
Someone from
lost a
Iowa
lot.
State. Yeah, we did. Handel
Roban,
Raban. Yeah,
yeah.
Raban. Um,
I just don't think
ooh,
it's quite as top heavy, and stuff people always emerge, but
yeah,
I think it won't
I
be
think you're
quite
right.
as stacked as years past. And we
Yeah, I
said
think
that
you're right.
before last year, and then it turned into a crazy good year. So things can change quick.
Yeah, yeah. That's a good problem to have. So, especially for content. But
Yes.
all right, Ben, nice job. I appreciate all the insight, and I appreciate again all of your work and analysis on this podcast. Shout out to Angela May. Angela May was awesome for us at Boston U. He did some incredible freelance work. Go follow him on Instagram. We had a bunch of great just interaction engagement on some of our socials as we were covering Boston U. So appreciate that. We've got a lot of good things in the works. I've got a few things that I'm going to show Ben after this that I'm pretty excited about. And but yeah, that's it. Ben, any final words?
Nope. Until next week, I'll talk to you.
I'll talk to you.